Welcome back to Georgia Living Podcast. I'm Celine Evans.
And I'm Chris Evans.
And we are going to cover the storm that came through, whether any of our prep paid off, community updates, including scholarships, and the situation on the square, and real estate, because that's what we do.
Exactly. So let's dive into it. We just had a big cold snap. Lots of ice on the ground, lots of trees down on the ground around Metro Atlanta.
This is pretty much the eastern half of the U.S. It's a huge storm that came through. I'm pretty sure that everyone's aware, unless you live in Florida, maybe you just got rain. But we live in a very wishy-washy area of the United States where it's warm, but it gets cold, and then it does that back and forth sometimes, and that's the problem. It creates ice.
Lots of moisture in the air. It's a relatively humid environment, even in the winter. So generally, the prep that we did, and if you're following on YouTube, we're having some technical difficulties today. Audio should be good, but we're seeing how this video plays out.
I don't know if this is going to make it, though, the video part, because I'm on the screen, I'm saying things from like a minute ago. Yeah,
we'll see how it comes out. It might just be an audio version this week. We'll see.
Yep.
But, just a quick recap. Everybody was prepping for this storm because, the forecast was anywhere from a quarter inch of ice to half an inch of ice. Celine, what were the probably 3 to 5 biggest things that we did around the house to prep?
Well, first of all, remembering 2014, right?
Oh, that left an impression on me.
I think it left an impression on everybody around here because it was so horrific during the middle of the week or the end of the week, but still, it was during the weekday. It was not on the weekend like it was this time. Mm-hmm. And we hadn't had an ice storm in quite a while since then.
Yeah, I think 2014 was the big ice storm that we had, and then that snow continued after it iced.
Yeah, that was not fun. Almost everybody who was here at that time has stories about that. And most of the generators, I think, that we own today in this area are from that situation.
Generators are always one of the biggest items before an incoming storm, right? And oftentimes they're returned after if they're not used. So a few jokes going around. There's some memes about folks lining up at Lowe's and Home Depot to return a whole line of people for generators.
A whole line of people
to
it's be returned?
Yeah, these memes going around. It's hilarious because it's like the whole parking lot is a giant line of people just waiting with a generator next to them.
But funny you say that because we actually did use the generator.
We did.
So that was part of our prepping that you asked about, is that we did prepare because even though we have underground utilities and we have most of this area we still do have power lines on the main roads. And sometimes these trees fall and take out an entire segment, which has happened before.
Oh, yeah.
And so I don't know what happened this time. I didn't see any trees down, but it definitely went out around 5:30 a.m.
Yeah, so Scarlett was very excited. She couldn't end up, she woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning. She was just watching the storm outside and didn't go back to bed. There was a little snow on the ground at that time. I remember peeking outside and seeing it. But then, what is happening here?
Did my screen go away?
No. Somebody called me, so FaceTime opened up.
Oh.
Let me put this on Do Not Disturb. I'll have to cut this out. All right, it's time to retire this Mac. I'm going to install this software on the next one. Well, let's just get back to it. So we ended up at 6 o'clock, give or take, hearing the beep of like losing power on the freezer, all the lights went off, and I hear Scarlett just start banging on our door. So I'm like, all right, I'm up. Went downstairs, set up the generator, ran some cables upstairs. We turned on the oil lamps that you have permanently installed in the living room.
Yes.
That was convenient. Didn't even have to refill them. The oil was still in there, so it doesn't evaporate that much.
Okay.
Good to know. And then started a fire. And then by the time the fire was roaring, maybe around 7:30, 7:40, power was back. So we were only out of it for like an hour, hour and a half.
Our friends didn't escape that easily, though.
No, well,
they're not in the East Cobb area, but, we have friends all around the state, and some of them just didn't get power until yesterday.
Yeah, so a buddy of mine is over in Dahlonega, the Dawsonville, Dahlonega area, and he didn't lose power until later in the day. They lost power probably around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Their generators kicked in. They were good to go. They got power back 24 hours later. So I think being prepared is definitely worth it.
Yeah, and there is a difference between generators, too. So you can have the portable generators, which cost, oh gosh, they've gone up in price, but around like $700, $800 for one that can power some decent electrics.
Yeah.
Or, appliances. And then you have whole house generators. So one of our neighbors has one.
While I was still in bed and the power went off, Scarlett came and knocked on the door, but at the same time, I heard that generator kick up from 2 doors down. Yeah, and I'm like, yeah. Our neighbor had the Generac guy out the other day and just testing it and making sure everything was good. So glad they didn't have any loss of power.
But it's really not a common thing. Cobb EMC does such a good job at keeping our power on that ever since we moved here a long time ago, it really hasn't been a problem.
No, it hasn't. And Cobb EMC, I want to say, I looked it up maybe, 8 or 9 years ago, and they were like the lowest downtime of any electrical provider in the area. So
that's wonderful. I mean, we don't need it, but sometimes you have elderly people who rely on machines that are powered by electricity. So
totally.
I mean, it can mean a night of sleep versus none.
Yeah, totally. You got people who require CPAP machines and all sorts of stuff like that. So fortunately, around here, we didn't get hit too bad. Cobb County was closed on Monday, but they sent out notices saying, hey, all the roads are open, because we had enough time for everything to dry before that freezing temperature really came in.
And I really didn't see too much on the roads today either. Maybe we went through one icy patch that was hidden away, but that's about it.
Yeah, and most of the folks that I've talked to throughout Cherokee, Cobb, kind of the Gwinnett area, they all came through unscathed. So I think Metro Atlanta, we really got lucky. Some areas on the south side really got hit hard. Same with on the east side, kind of over near Athens, they got hit really hard. There were a lot of trees down, a lot of roads blocked for a little while, but GDOT got out there and cleared them all really quickly. So great work, Metro Atlanta, being prepared. Paid off.
Yeah.
All right, so what else? We've got...
I mean, you can, if you really want to plan, you can definitely get everything together, right? So you don't even have to put this together itself. You can just have a list of what you're going to do in case of an emergency.
Yes, and if you don't want to keep that list, you can go to selectrealty.com and search storm, and you will find the article that we came out, which is the ultimate guide to surviving a storm in Georgia. It covers all sorts of things for getting prepared, all the way up through what happens if something happens, who do you call? So those guides are on the website. Hopefully that can be some value to people. We ended up making sure that everything was secured outside. We made sure that we had communication taken care of between all of our friends. We were all in a group chat, making sure everybody was all right. Same thing with neighbors, parents. We were all checking in on them, making sure everybody was okay with the storm, and that if any of our neighbors or friends in the area had issues, we were prepared to go and help them. what actually mattered. I mean, we used the generator.
We used the Jackery. I think that has been used quite a bit. Could you explain what a Jackery is?
Yeah, so they have generators which are gas powered, but they also have generators which are basically a giant battery bank. And a Jackery is one that can hook up to a solar panel, so it can charge itself and store that energy to be used. And they have different size batteries depending upon what you're trying to power and how long you can do that. There's actually, you can make your own battery bank. I was watching a podcast the other day, and it was Gear Talk on the Meat Eater, and they ended up talking about how they built a battery bank. So they can be had relatively affordably if you're building your own, but they can be pretty costly, $1,000, $1,200 if you're buying one of the battery ones now.
Wow.
Yeah, they went up in price. Before in like 2018 when they were like $300, $400 for the highest end one. Now it's like $1,200 for the highest end one. But They power a lot more now as well. They're bigger batteries. They last longer. The key with those is that you can't let them drain down to zero. Ask me how I know. Because my kids did it, and then it wasn't able to take a charge. So you got to keep those devices charged to keep the batteries healthy. Huh? We got another one. It was replaced about 3 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So I ended up having to get one because the first one
once it goes
wouldn't
down to
work.
zero, it's trash?
Ours was, because it had been used for quite a while, but then it got down to zero and the battery was fully depleted. It wasn't able to take a charge. I've had that happen on automotive batteries before. With those batteries, I was able to hook them up to, a jumper cable to get a little charge to it, because once it has a charge, it'll start taking it. But the Jackery I wasn't able to hook it up like that.
Oh.
So,
okay.
Is what it is.
We had our heater going on in our greenhouse.
The heater was going on in the greenhouse. Yep. We used the flashlights. We had all the devices charged. That was great. We ended up using the Jackery, the generator.
And the gas stove still worked because even though the igniter is not quite functional at that time.
It's electrical power.
It's electric,
so you need to take a lighter to it. But you just hold a lighter to your stove and then crank on the gas, and boom, now you're cooking again.
Yeah. So that was still okay.
Yeah, and we didn't lose hot water because you can plug that into the generator. Didn't really need it, but if we needed to, it was gas powered, so you could just plug that in for the electrical sensors to work.
What did we not? I mean, I don't think that we really brought anything out that was unnecessary.
No, we didn't have to use any of the cots or the blankets, or we didn't have to use that. They were accessible if we needed them, but it's not worth bringing those out unless you absolutely need them.
Well, they're accessible because we just cleaned the attic.
We just cleaned the entire house.
Yeah.
The amount of stuff that we removed is incredible.
It's so much.
It really is. But that allowed us to be able to relax a little, right? This weekend got to chill out and do some leather work and
chill out. What are you talking about? I worked all Sunday and all yesterday. Yeah. I thought I was gonna have a break, and I thought, okay, Saturday's done. We have all the online school done because we didn't meet in person because of the storm coming in.
Yep.
We have people coming in from all around to go to Japanese school, so they're coming from Tennessee, Alabama. I mean, it very far, quite often from Macon as well. So they travel 6 hours a day just to go to school. And that wouldn't have been that great with the impending storm, especially when there are people up north. So we did online. And that, of course, takes a lot out of you because you have 3 kids doing online class at the same time, right next to each other on 3 different classes. And you have all of the classmates staring with them. Yeah. Yeah. So you never know what's going to happen when you go in the kitchen just to get a drink. You don't know who's watching.
Exactly. So, I think a quick takeaway here is if you had to do it again with 60 minutes of prep time, kind of what are the top 5 things you do first?
At least a flashlight and then a power source. And once you have that, you can take your time, I think.
Yeah.
As long as you can see, because when you can't see, you really can't see. And I don't think that we're used to it living in the suburbs. But think about it. When you go camping or hunting, what can you see once you get outside that zippered tent, right?
Yep.
It's the same way.
It's dark.
All the lights are off. There's no light pollution.
Which is nice. I kind of like that, but definitely,
I do too.
The generator was key. Because we had that, we didn't have to worry about going out and getting all the blankets in case power went out. It was just right there, and I think the best thing that we have is kind of everything is in one place, like all of our. Because I am a hunter, so in my garage I have a stack of DeWalt stackable containers, and that way whenever I go out to camp, it's all right there. The bottom is food and sleeping bag, and then I've got hunting gear, and then I've got flashlights and all sorts of stuff. So it's all in one place for us. Mm-hmm. If I didn't have that hobby, I'd probably keep 2 bins. I'd have one bin that was kind of food and water, kind of ready to go, and then one bin that's power and light. I'm going to make sure that I have a power source, something to go, even if it's just a couple of battery banks that are emergency use. So I think it's worth it. Let's move into community news now.
Yeah. So as we said last episode, Kiwanis is having their scholarship season right now, and the applications are open right now. And this is really, really important because you don't have to be in Kiwanis to get this scholarship. It is really information that students, parents, counselors, anyone mentoring a student should know. And you go to mariettakiwanis.org, kiwanis.org/scholarships, and that's plural, to see the full details of the scholarship. And you're in Kiwanis, so
I am. And so we raise about $30,000, a little over $30,000 annually, doing all the flags throughout Marietta. So every holiday when you see a flag out there, that's actually a fundraiser for children in Marietta and the area for scholarships. Last year, I think we gave out 13 scholarships. I'm not sure exactly how many are up there right now, but there's a lot of opportunity. They're not all college-focused scholarships. There's scholarships available for vocational schools as well. So it's definitely worth the look. Go through it, fill out the applications. The deadline is on the website. I want to say it's in March. So there's plenty of time to get those applications filled out and turned in.
Yeah.
All right.
Other big news. So across town, because it's a little further away from us in East Cobb, is what is formerly now the Cobb Galleria Center.
Yeah.
In our time when we were in high school, it was the Cobb Galleria. This was a place that has a very long history. So I was born in Atlanta, and I lived near the gallery off of Spring Road, a neighborhood off of there. And it's very close, and I remember going to the gallery quite often as a child just because of the proximity to our house. Mm-hmm. Cumberland is right there across the street, and then you have the Galleria. Mm-hmm. And it's seen a lot of incarnations throughout my time here. You kind of caught the tail end of that era that I was born into, but this has always been convention, kind of big.
It's a meeting place.
Ready.
Yeah, it's an event center.
But when I was younger, it was also really full of stores.
Yeah.
And they were unique too. I remember getting, those tacky 90s ties. Okay, well, there was a store that sold them. I needed a tie for Father's Day, apparently. He doesn't wear ties, so I should have gotten him something different. But
it's a perfect gift for a kid to give a parent.
There was a kiosk that sold crystal figurines and did some trophies as well for those, gifts and nice mementos. There were art galleries. There were convenience stores. Do you remember anything else that was there? A Hallmark card store?
I really spent my my getting in trouble years of youth there mostly. We would There was a store in there for a period of time that would sell cigarettes to underage kids, so we would go there. And
that's so bad.
that was my experience with the Galleria.
Oh.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, we would go there and like in between finding skateboard places, and that was it. We went there quite often, actually.
Oh. Okay. That was before.
But now it's closed.
Before we were together.
It closed 4 months ago.
Yes.
And now they're reopening it. It's reopened as the Cobb Convention Center. And
it's still been used up from, the time that we need to say that it is being done right now, and we'll get back to that. But the thing is that the Galleria kind of went into disuse, and all those stores shut down, and it was very contended,
It wasn't a special place to hold an event anymore.
Yeah, it wasn't unique, and Cobb, had Truist across the street, and that brought more people into Cumberland, because Cumberland was also on the decline.
It was.
We would go into that mall in our high school years, and it would seem so empty. Nobody was there.
There was a period of violence where that mall was a dangerous place, where it was often on the news as the epicenter of like a shooting or a robbery. It really was downhill, and this is like pre-2014. When did the Truist opened up in like 2016, 2015?
Regardless, Truist opening up across the street has really impacted
the whole area.
The Galleria as well as Cumberland Mall, they're all three right next to each other.
That's thanks to the CID, which is the Cumberland Improvement District.
Yeah.
It's a self-imposed tax on businesses in the area that goes back into improving the community there. So now that and to preface this, the number one industry in Cobb County is tourism. So when Cobb was looking at ways that we can attract more to that and provide a better experience and really have a place where it's like, hey, you're looking for an event venue for your corporation. Do you want them walking around Smyrna in the Cumberland area with Truist and the Battery and all of the police and security presence, or do you want to have them walking around Buckhead or downtown? So the value pitch is to say, hey, we've got this great area. There's some walkability with the pedestrian bridges now, so you can avoid the traffic. It's a very safe area. It's heavily patrolled and enforced with Cobb County.
There's parking, too.
There's parking.
Is not in the Buckhead Lenox area, unless you're at a mall.
Yes, so the whole idea with renovating this Galleria is to provide really a destination to attract more people to our county. And
the location's great. It's very easy to access.
Yeah. So the convention center is now open. They've begun demolishing the shops at the Galleria. So those are now gone.
Which were already empty anyways.
Yeah, they had moved out the tenants. They didn't demolish the building with things.
That's not what I was thinking.
So everybody was gone. So we'll see how that's all going to play out. But this is a big development project in our area that we should all be happy that is going to attract more people and more infrastructure.
Yeah, and last time we were there for a building expo. And it wasn't that long ago either, maybe 2 years ago. So it's not that this place had cobwebs and it was, not visited, and it was looking like it was supposed to be in Stranger Things,
FMLS held a showcase event there every year. I mean, it was a great place for expos because it's a lot of square footage, but now it's moving into more of a place where we're going to still have those, but be able to attract even more because it's going to be a place you want to go.
Yes,
So, kind of like the Cobb Civic Center, which opened up, about 10 years ago or so, and a lot of the other destinations that we're bringing here.
The Cobb Civic Center's always been there.
Not the Cobb Civic Center, the Cobb Energy Center.
Oh.
the Cobb Energy Center, which is also over there in the Cumberland area.
Got it. So what's being refreshed? There's the exhibit hall lighting upgrades that are actually going to be put in. It was well lit, but a little dim. And then refreshing the food options as well. I think that's very important. Mm-hmm. Ballroom and pre-function updates. Then there's rotunda updates plus a signature chandelier. It's a you'll have to see it when you see it type of chandelier, apparently.
Yeah, it's a teaser, so it's something that apparently is going to be unique. Something you want to go and see.
Who knows? All right, so what is coming up next with all of this upgrades? These are already done, apparently. So what's coming up that hasn't been done to the Cobb Galleria? I'll let you do that.
So there's going to be a new grand entry. There's going to be a junior ballroom, and they're going to add more meeting rooms and boardroom space.
I wonder what junior ballroom means.
Just a smaller one.
A smaller? Yeah. Not for younger people?
No, not for younger.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more, yeah, because they're also going to be adding an outdoor courtyard and garden spaces, along with parking improvements and more indoor event space. So this is one of those projects that kind of quietly changes the kind of events that Cobb can attract. And that's going to split. It's going to spill into the restaurants in the area, the hotels, and the weekend traffic patterns. So just be aware of that, too.
Yeah, 20 years ago, if you would have told me before Truist came in that this area was going to be what it is today, I would have
laughed.
There's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, there really is.
But good job, right?
Exactly. So if you want more information on this, you can go to cobbconvention.com/where-it-all-comes-together. So cobbconvention.com/where-it-all-comes-together with dashes in between each word.
Yeah. And let's talk about something closer to us in East Cobb.
Yeah.
And that is Marietta Square. So we talked about this a few episodes ago. And there is, for those of you who haven't been to the square in a long time or have never been there is, obviously it's shaped like a square.
Yes.
On one of the sides of the square, there is a lot that is unoccupied.
North Park. Yeah.
And it has been unoccupied for a little bit of time, I would say. And it's not really serving the community with it not being there and just being a lot.
By a little bit of time. I think the demolition on the previous building happened like 2013, 2014.
That's a little bit of time.
So it's been like a decade of this building not being there. And it's gained the nickname the Goldstein Gap because it's owned by the Goldstein family.
Now, do you remember what was there? Was that Schilling's hardware store?
I don't remember what was there beforehand.
I have a feeling it was a hardware store or some sort of pharmacy.
It's been a long time. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But they had finally announced that they created this partnership with Ted's Montana Grill. Mm-hmm. Ted's was going to come in, build a 3-story building on the lot without owning the lot, and to operate a Ted's Montana Grill with a very long lease. That ended up getting some negative pushback from the old Marietta crowd, wanting local businesses and restaurants on the square. But I don't think this conversation. So Ted's ended up saying we're going to pull out of this, right? But I don't think the conversation is necessarily over yet. It's continuing to be discussed in the Marietta Daily Journal because I don't see a better option here. I mean, the criticism is that it's not local, it's a franchise. Well, it's headquartered here in Atlanta.
Yeah, and Ted Turner.
And so it's about as local as a franchise can get. They serve healthy food. It's definitely a chain, but it's a high quality one. And we already have another chain on the square.
Yeah.
With Taqueria Tsunami. So, I mean, they exist there. But the challenge is, if Marietta wants this to be local, you have to have somebody who's willing to build a 3-story building in Marietta Square in today's day and age for a restaurant without owning the land. That's the key here, because the Goldstein family's not selling the land. So they've gone through like 4 different projects and iterations. None of them had the success or the the support from the county around it. So the conversation now in the Marietta Daily Journal is, if you want something like this, you got to show support for it. If we as a community can come together and say, hey, look, we want TEDs. The leadership in the county wants TEDs. The leadership in Marietta wants TEDs. We want TEDs because I don't see any way we're going to have a nice building on the square with a tenant footing the bill unless it's going to be a company like this. And they would be great on the square.
You got to have capital or lending power, right?
Yeah. And TEDs is in other squares too. Like there's a TED in downtown Beaufort and other downtown areas throughout Metro Atlanta. It's a good fit. It ends up attracting a lot of people. And
I like the decor.
Yeah, totally. So if you want to see something like TEDs happen in Marietta, you have to let your county leaders know. So we'll post a link to an article on the MDJ. Reach out and just share what you want to have in that square.
I mean, I guess it's two sides of the pendulum. You've got the gatekeepers and then the progress makers.
Yeah, you got to get through those gatekeepers.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that kind of wraps up what's going on in the county this week. Everybody's been focused on that storm. We were talking and just kind of going through what we've covered and what we haven't covered in the show so far. And we haven't spent a lot of time on home inspections.
I know. I was like, hey, what about home inspections? We haven't talked about that.
Yeah. So, in anytime you're buying a house, you have generally a due diligence period in Georgia. That's going to be the time where you bring out a home inspector and have the home gone through by a professional.
And we're a caveat emptor state, so that's really important.
So what does that mean, honey?
Buyer beware.
Caveat emptor. It's Latin for buyer beware, which means in Georgia that after you have purchased it, there is little to no recourse on the seller for anything that happens to that house or that car or whatever it is that you're buying after you have exchanged money and goods. So if you're buying a house, it's important to get a home inspection. It is likely that the home inspector will not cover every little detail or find every little thing that's wrong with the house because that's not their job. But they are there to give you a big picture of the condition of the property to get an understanding of what you're getting into. So there's some questions that should be asked of home inspectors throughout the process, both from either the seller's angle to understand how the home inspection works and from the buyer's angle. So, Celine, what does a home inspection cover and what does it not cover, generally speaking?
Visible areas is what it really covers. They're not going to go and dig a hole and find some latent defect.
Yeah.
They're not really going to move furniture either. They're not even going to try to open a window because it can break.
Yeah.
A lot of times they're painted shut. So anything that they can see with their eyes or easily get to. If you have an attic with so much stuff in it, we don't, because we cleared it out.
They'll say that they can't get to it, so it's not included in the inspection.
Exactly. So people should be tidy anyways, and you shouldn't have a hoarder situation to begin with because that's a separate problem. But really, it's just the stuff that they can see.
And just on that, because the seller's going to have a question here, the contracts that we use in Georgia put it on the seller that they have to make the home accessible. So if there's any area that's inaccessible, the seller would have to correct that. But still, the home inspector is not going to be lifting carpets to inspect the floor quality underneath the carpet. They're not going to be moving furniture to make sure that there's no holes in walls behind it. That's just not their job. They're going to do a minimally invasive inspection. So they're going to look at the electrical systems in the house. They're going to look at the plumbing systems in the house. They're going to test the HVAC, which is limited in the inspection depending upon the time of year. If it's 20 degrees outside, they're not going to be able to test a temperature differential on the air conditioning. If it's 100 degrees outside, the heater, they're not going to be able to really test that. So it's just to give you an understanding of where the major defects are in the house. Celine, how long is the due diligence window, and what's the timeline like to schedule these inspections?
Well, to go back a little bit, if you're wondering, well, what if there's a hole behind a piece of furniture? Mm-hmm. The seller should be disclosing these things. That is not easily findable, discoverable. This is what I want to say, because if it's that heavy of a piece of furniture and it's difficult to move it, then they really should be disclosing that on a latent defect exhibit. Is just what I'm trying to say, is that, for the people who are wondering, well, how would I?
I've seen this kind of go both ways.
Okay.
If there's a part of the property that's sealed off and then there's something wrong in that area that you can't get to, that's one thing. If it's moving furniture, I think that attorneys have generally said it's on the buyer to look behind the furniture, right? So bring a flashlight with you. And if there's something that you can't get to, you want to make sure that it's addressed in your walkthrough. So you're going to walk the property before you close it. All of the items should be removed from the house at that time so you can see the condition and make sure that there's no damage that was caused during the move.
Okay, maybe I should have said a little bit more permanent or sealed off.
Yeah.
That's why I said very heavy furniture that's just no way you can move,
exactly.
Like a granite type of safe or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Like if there's
it's ridiculous,
if there's a 1,000-pound gun safe, you're not going to be expected to move that.
That's definitely. So that was just, to answer the questions, well, what if there is? So your question was the due diligence window and what's the timeline to schedule inspections. So due diligence windows, it is usually a number of days, not months, in Georgia, and it's a negotiable point. So is there a set number of days? No, because it depends on the deal that you're doing, and it can be very short, it can be very long. It depends on the type of the property as well. The more unique ones, gonna have to have a little bit more special inspectors. The run-of-the-mill cookie-cutter house, maybe not so. And so because of this, it's very flexible, and the due diligence window is the time when a buyer goes out and does all of their discovery, their due diligence. And the time to schedule inspections really is right after you get a binding contract.
Yeah, it's the first thing you do.
Yeah, it is a third party. They are independent contractors. They usually own their own company, the inspectors, and they have a schedule as well. So they're probably going to get irked if you ask the day before or you hold off, and sellers are probably not going to extend their due diligence period just because your agent forgot to schedule an inspection.
Yeah, so I would say in my experience, due diligence is going to range from 5 to 10 days, calendar days.
But that also depends on the selling season, the type of property as well, and the interest rates.
Generally speaking.
Yeah.
I think that, if you're somewhere between 5 and 10 days, you're going to be competitive for due diligence. I would say that the average over my career is 7. It's about a week. Once you go under contract, you're going to order the inspector. The inspector is going to get you on the calendar. You have to make sure that the seller, if they're living in the house, can vacate the house during that time. And usually it's going to take 1 to 2 business days to get the inspector out. So if you're calling on a Friday, they're not going to go out until Monday or Tuesday. When the inspector goes out, you're usually getting the report 24 hours later. So if you're doing a 3-day due diligence, you're going to have to really have the inspector out on day 1. So you should probably have that scheduled in advance. If you're doing 10 days, then you've got a little bit more wiggle room. But let's talk about the time that it takes to do an inspection, because there's some times where they have to leave a device in a house for 48 hours before they can collect it. So in those situations, and we'll talk about the situations a little later on that, but in those situations, you need 48 hours before you're going to have all the reports back. So you just want to make sure that you're timing your inspections and when it's taking place, so you know when the reports are coming back, because you want to have 1 or 2 days left over in due diligence after you've received everything to go through it all, to think through it, and to be able to negotiate any repairs that are necessary in the house. So I think that kind of gives you an idea, because once you get the inspection report, you can go back and renegotiate if something's found and it's serious. You go through it.
You can. So these reports that inspectors create for you, they usually use a template, and just like everyone writes an essay differently, it's still the same subject, it's still the same book report, whatever it is that you're doing, but they're all different because we're all different as people. Well, they also fill out the inspection report as an individual. So you might get one company that sends out a very short report, and then you have another company that sends way too many pages and scares the buyer. So be aware that it all comes in different flavors, short, long, whatever it can be.
You can actually ask a home inspector, if you're interviewing who you're going to use, you can ask them to send you a sample report of what they do so you can see what their report looks like and what areas it covers. Because sometimes the easier a report is to read, the easier it is to negotiate with another party, because you're all trying to get on the same page. So
there are other tests that, whenever you hire an inspector, you have the basic home inspection, but there are ancillary tests that you can order, just like if you're doing a checkup at a doctor's house or a doctor's office. So those things that you can order are going to be radon, which is very important. And then you can get air quality as well. But those are a little bit different, and not every inspector has radon capabilities or air quality capabilities as well. So what an inspector is actually going to look at is going to be a roof condition. So make sure that the flashing is okay and that it's not creeping, the water's not creeping in from that area, and make sure that the flashing is in good condition. The attic insulation, ventilation, and signs of moisture, as well as rodents in there, if they can get to it. Any leaks, water pressure, drains that are not draining well, the age of the water heater, and the installation of that water heater.
They're going to make sure that there's an expansion tank. They're going to check the age. They're going to look for corrosion, that kind of stuff.
Right. Then there's electrical panels, outlets, GFCIs, visible wiring concerns, HVAC age, basic operation, condensate, drainage, and a whole plethora of more. Even the outdoor courtyard, garden spaces.
So,
I'm
on
sorry.
the wrong page. Foundations, crawl space, all observations. They're going to look for moisture.
But they do look outside too.
Yes. Yeah. They'll take a look at landscaping. They got some fence issues in one that we recently did.
Yep.
They'll look at moisture, insulation. They're going to check the vapor barrier if you have a crawl space. They'll check windows and doors for obvious rot, failed seals, drainage patterns. They're going to look and see if they think water's going to pool up and enter around the house. And then they're going to check appliances. They're going to make sure that things work. Checking like burner, stovetop, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and to go back to the ancillary test, because that is the regular test that you get back, or the regular report. The ancillary tests are going to be more commonly the granite. We have a lot of granite in Georgia, and that is spread throughout the state.
Stone Mountain is a giant slab of granite, and the veins for that run underneath most of eastern Georgia all the way up into Appalachia, into Tennessee.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of granite that's underneath us. And radon it's a colorless and odorless gas that's emitted by granite.
Yep, and it's the #1 leader of lung cancer in America. So you don't want to mess around with this. If you're thinking, oh, well, my neighbor was negative 2 doors down, you might have a pocket of granite that you're sitting on that they are not.
Yeah, it is house by house. We've had a house come in testing 4.8, and the neighbor across the street tested 1.2. And the EPA minimum the EPA highest recommended is like 4. So,
right.
So what that means is that the gas is emitted through granite. It comes up through the foundation into the house and is trapped in the house because you have a roof. So if you have radon in a house, it's a very easy mitigation. What they end up doing is going and drilling a hole in your foundation that allows that gas to concentrate in one area. It's diverted around the living area through a pipe and vented in the roof. And there's an active fan system there that's constantly pulling that air, which mitigates the issue.
Scary consequences, but easy fix.
Very easy fix. When I started, I think the radon mitigation systems were like $800. Now they're maybe like $2,000, but that's 15 years. So
yeah, and there are actually two different types of these machines. Last I checked, there is an easy hockey puck looking thing that you leave out for a few days and then they just come and read it, like a bacterial plate, I guess, with agar in it. And then you have the machine. It looks like a Ghostbusters box.
It does.
Yeah. And then they hook it up inside the room and it reads it continuously throughout a day or so. I don't know what their timeline is. Then they come back and take that machine and read that. So I have heard that the hockey puck is not as accurate as the machine.
All the inspectors I've used use the machine.
Yes. But the machine does cost. So the independent contractors may not have a machine if they are just starting out or if they haven't made that investment in their business yet.
That's true. So this kind of goes into when choosing your inspector. Do you go with the one inspector who's just solo employed, or do you hire a company of inspectors that has more resources? This comes down to what your concerns are and what you want to have inspected in the house, because as the buyer, you set the tone. If you want to have everything inspected, you can. If you just want to have a basic inspection, that's also up to you if you're choosing to take on additional risk of unknown. There's nothing wrong with just doing a plain inspection and moving forward if everything looks good on the inspection. But the additional services, so a base inspection for us is kind of around the $600 range. Then you can add on services. To add on a radon test, it's about an additional $200. You can also add on a sewer scope if your property is on sewer. That's another $200. In there, they go in through the clean-out valve and check the sewer line from the house to the street to make sure there's no roots or collapse in the pipe, and make sure that, once you get into that house, you're not going to have any big drainage issues. If you're on septic, that's another inspection item. You're going to want to have a septic specialist come out, pump, and inspect the system. So there's all sorts of issues, and the septic inspection, that's going to be about $600-700 too. So the inspection costs can add up quickly. The way to look at them as a consumer is that they're sunk costs. If you're spending money on an inspection, it's your knowledge to know what you're buying. And if you end up walking away from that contract because of what you find, you're going to have to do the expense on the next property that you find. But the way that you look at it is, I spent $600-800 to inspect this house, and it saved me $25,000-30,000 in work that I would have had to do over the next few years. So it's a savings, not an expense.
It's also savings because there are items that trigger responses to repairs that are going to be done.
So when you're doing an inspection, because you're in due diligence, you have that ability to renegotiate for some repairs or concessions based off of what your findings are. So if the inspection costs you $800, but you find that there's no life left in the roof, and you're able to negotiate $6,000 towards a new roof, then that inspection was a net positive $5,000. If you decide to still move forward with the house, because otherwise you could have bought the house without knowing that, spent the extra money, and still had the expense later on.
And with an inspection, it's actual third-party information that you can take and say, hey, this really does need to be repaired. Yeah. It is deferred maintenance or a safety issue, and this is the proof. Now, sometimes that proof may not be as clear, and you need to dig in a little bit further into that, but quite often they are clear.
Yeah, and so from the seller's point of view, they usually have a lot of questions as well. One of them being, what are the most common items that trigger a renegotiation based off of the price range? So when going through the inspection, as you just mentioned, we generally set expectations with both sides of the transaction. That when we go under contract, we're placing that under contract with the condition of the house generally being as what you've observed. So that means that later on, if the buyer says, well, we're going to have to repaint the whole house, we want $10,000 towards paint, we're going to say, look, this is completely cosmetic. That we're not going to address, we're not going to negotiate on. But if the inspection comes back and finds that one of the HVAC units is failing, then you can go through and renegotiate to have maybe an HVAC reinstalled or fixed.
I really think that the most common items are going to be large ticket items.
They usually are.
They are, and that's unfortunate for the seller, but for the buyer, think about it in their shoes, right?
Yeah.
They're paying closing costs unless you have some concession from the seller. They have their savings that they are putting a big chunk down to do the initial payment for the loan. Or the down payment, I should say. And so they're going to be cash poor at this. I know that every time, we wrote a book on our journey to make our portfolio. And every time that we bought a house, I know that we felt cash poor for quite a while after that.
Yeah.
So anything that is very expensive, like HVAC systems,
HVAC,
roofs,
water heater, roof, plumbing systems, appliances, if your flooring has to be replaced. I mean, these are big ticket items.
Right. So those things they should be kept up anyways for normal living conditions. Yeah. So it shouldn't be a big problem for a seller unless they have just been very dragging their feet and not fixing that roof or anything like that. That's going to bite them in the butt at that point.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. Whenever we're talking about what buyers are looking for in this market, they don't want to have those big ticket expenses. So if you've got a lot of the systems updated within the last 5 years, you're already ahead of the game. A lot of the inspection items that we usually see come up are code changes that have happened that might be a relatively easy fix, but still be a safety issue, like a double tap in the neutral in your electrical panel. They used to allow that. Now they don't recommend it. But fixing that is only, a couple of $100 to have an electrician come out. But it could have some serious savings. Mm-hmm. So the big ticket items that we usually are handling in an inspection are either safety. So electrical, plumbing, there's a leak, this isn't working right, this is loose, fixing some small stuff up that we find, or deferred maintenance, right? You don't have operable windows. In a house, you should have operable windows. If you haven't serviced your HVAC in 6 years, it's reasonable for a seller to ask, or a buyer to ask you to have that HVAC system serviced. Things like that. So deferred maintenance, safety issues, those are the big ticket items on the inspection that we're going to be worried about as a seller. And then one of the big questions that I get is from sellers, what can I do to minimize the surprises that I can get later on? Celine, what's something that can be done up front?
Yeah, you can do a pre-listing inspection to see what is there, but that's kind of a double-edged sword, I think, because there are some really very proactive sellers, in my opinion, who have taken this and just fixed everything on there. And they think, oh, they're not going to find anything else now that I fixed everything. Well, like I said,
yeah,
they're going to hire their own inspector who writes their essay or their report a little bit differently than the previous one. They're going to find stuff. You find stuff in new construction. You're going to find stuff in a resale that has been all fixed up as well. There's going to be something.
Oh, yeah.
And so it really depends on the situation and what the seller can do. Sometimes it's about the net. You're at the lowest net that you can take and you just don't have room for repair. And that's happening more and more lately when people have been coming down on price. Mm-hmm. So they're already giving some concessions. So the sellers are getting a little bit tighter on their purse as well.
Exactly.
But when do you fix them and when do you offer a credit instead of that? Well, other than the net, there's also the buyer. So if they're a wishy-washy buyer, do you want to do all these repairs and then them not make it to the closing table? You might just want to say, hey, I'll give you this much cash. You can do it yourself. See if they make it to the closing table, right?
Well, let's also talk about there's complexity added into a contract when the seller is making repairs versus offering a credit.
There's that too.
So if you're a buyer, you want to have stuff done, but you want to have it done right. And if you're a seller, you want to have stuff done at the least out-of-pocket cost for you. If you can negotiate a cash transaction around the work that needs to be done, usually that can be folded into closing costs. However, if the buyer's closing costs are maxed out, there's a limit, there's a threshold to how much the buyer can receive from a seller. If that gets maxed out, then the only option is to either have the seller fix it, or the seller can make a payment to a third-party contractor to have the work done after closing, but then you risk them being paid before the work is done. So if you're going to have the repairs done, you want to have it written in the contract clearly that the work is to be done by licensed professionals where applicable. You don't want a handyman doing plumbing work when it requires a licensed plumber. Same thing with electrical. But you need to have receipts. You know, from the seller side, you can wait to not do the work until all the conditions of the contract have been met. So the financing contingency and the appraisal contingency is done with. But usually that's only going to leave you maybe a week to 2 weeks in the contract to have this work done. So you'd have to get it done quickly and then provide receipts showing that the work was completed. Because when you put in work into a contract and say the seller's going to have this, and this done, well, the buyer's lender, if they have one, is going to want proof that the seller complied with those terms in the contract. So you have to have the receipts showing that everything was paid, so we know there's no open liens against the property. And then we have to show that all the work was done according to the contract. So if the contract has a lot of repairs in it, you got to make sure that every single one of those repairs ends up making its way into a receipt, so an underwriter's not going to give you a flag. So cash is the easiest because you could just say, hey, I'm going to give you this. If you can't give cash because of the lender concessions, then having the work done is the second best option. Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of information
before
you list a property. There's also documentation that you can gather as part of this package of disclosures that you can send out to an interested party.
Absolutely.
And that's going to be your roof age, your HVAC, your service history, your warranties, permits if applicable. Mm-hmm. So you can put all this together in a package and then send it to them before they even come to your house. And it depends on the information. It could, entice them a little bit more, or it could be like, you might want to think about the timing that you give it to them. I don't know. It depends.
Everything is situation based.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we really do on the full service side of real estate is just help you understand what applies to each situation, because there's times where cash makes sense. There's times where doing the work makes sense. There's times where, but if, as far as documentation goes, what I like to do on the full service listings is I put together a binder that I keep in the house. And that has a list reports report that shows about the area. We have the disclosures in that binder so that the buyers can look through either the community or the seller's disclosure statement right there. And then we have any information about the house. So warranties, paperwork, all that. We want to transfer that to the new buyer. And if we could just give it as one booklet, that makes it easy.
Mm-hmm. So what, if you have to have an analogy for this whole, mess of everything, It's creating your own Carfax for your house. So I want to say.
Yeah.
The seller has to put forth some information, and then the buyer has to hire an inspector.
Yeah.
And then you put those two pieces of information together, and it's your Carfax for your house, because there's really no system right now that tracks it all.
Housefax.
Yeah.
Well, with the integration of Bitcoin and they're going to be tokenizing every property ID in the United States. So eventually, I think we will have Housefax.
Well, hasn't been done yet.
Nope. All right. So I think the last thing I want to know is, what do we look for in a great inspector?
Yeah, because like I said, they come in all different shapes and sizes.
And boy, can a bad inspector do some damage.
Holy moly, we've had some bad ones to where we're very picky about who we hire. And of course, the report itself, like I said, some people put way too much in there and scare the buyer. Some people don't put enough in there and then shoot themselves in the foot when the buyer buys the house, and then they're like, oh, you didn't see this? It's right here, you know?
Yep.
That's a problem. So make sure that you are okay with what their sample inspection looks like.
Yeah. If you're going to use one of the major inspection companies around Metro Atlanta, you're probably fine. But if you're going to use like a solo inspector, like they're no longer with the company, they just do their own thing now, get a copy of the report and understand what it looks like before you hire them.
Yeah. Also, willingness to walk with the buyer through the findings on site. So what you do in most of your full service listings is that you'll show up at the very end.
Yeah.
15 minutes before it ends. And then that way the buyer isn't nervous Nancy or, Nellie hovering over this inspector. And the inspector has got most of their stuff done. And that way they can converse with it, right? Sometimes they put them at ease. Sometimes not so much.
So we know a lot about homes, but we are not licensed home inspectors. So we want to make sure that we are definitely relying on the pros and giving them the opportunity to do their job. Now, giving them the opportunity to do their job means that as the buyer, we don't want to be there during the home inspection, not the whole time, because we don't want to be looking over the inspector's shoulder and making him feel like, he's thinking of things other than the house while he's doing the inspection. But we will show up at the end, usually, at the 2 or 2.5 hour mark, depending upon the size of the house. I'll meet the inspector and the buyer there. And we'll take 20 minutes and just sit down and talk through the house and hear the findings of the inspector. We want to know their opinion, anything that is a red flag or things that we need to be aware of, anything that we need to really inspect. And by meeting with him, he actually gets the chance to point out things to us, any of those findings. So when we then go into negotiation to try and get the seller to make some of those repairs, we have a little bit more hands-on knowledge than just a paper report. And we know kind of our expectations are set both by the inspector and by, me and the client. So we're all on the same page of what we think is really important and what we think is something that we're going to try and get, but would be okay if we didn't.
Yeah, now sometimes they can't do stuff like Radon if they don't have that machine, or some environmental testing like mold and stuff like that they don't have the equipment for.
In those cases, you can bring out other companies.
Yes, and they'll recommend that too.
Yeah.
So that's a good inspector who will say, hey, this is my limitation. I know where I can do and then where I can't do. Please get this looked at.
Yeah, and sometimes if there's people that have like serious allergies, if you're one of those who, air quality is very important to you in the house, you're going to want to probably bring out Atlanta Environmental. They're an environmental testing lab. They will come and they will test the air quality in the house, but you're going to need to make sure that your due diligence is on the longer side, probably closer to 14 days, because you're not going to get the lab results back. You're not going to have time to schedule them and then get the lab results back within, a 7-day due diligence. It's just unrealistic.
Yeah. And sellers are usually flexible if it's the fault of the lab or, not at fault of the buyer. Now, do they have to be? No. But that's part of playing the negotiation game, is to be a little bit more nicer, when you have wrenches that are thrown at you.
Yep, because caveat emptor, and you have that due diligence period. So if you don't address air quality or anything that's important to you during that due diligence period and your due diligence ends, now you're locked into that contract. Mm-hmm. If you terminate that contract, there's a high likelihood that you're going to lose your earnest money and that you may owe commissions to the agents involved because you're putting yourself in a default position. So there's risk on the line if you don't do things in a timely manner. Having a good agent to guide you through that process and to work with you to figure out what things you want to inspect to make sure your due diligence is long enough is a very important thing, because you set those expectations up front with the seller, not after 7 days and you're like, I need another 7 days. You're going to lose goodwill in the contract and negotiation there.
Yeah.
So I think we covered a lot today.
Inspections are not the juiciest thing to talk about.
Yeah.
But it's very, very important because it's the backbone of negotiation here. Yes, you can do your initial terms and starting point, but what is the first set of data that you actually get? Well, the disclosures, but you're reviewing the disclosures as the inspection's going on and putting all those pieces together to make your home facts.
Yep.
It gives you a better idea of what you're purchasing, and it is a buyer beware state. So once you have it, it's yours. And if you didn't test it, you didn't test it. That's on you.
Sure is. Mm-hmm. That's caveat emptor for you. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen buyers on the back end come and find something and then try and go after it. Probably about 3 or 4 times over 15 years. A buyer's tried to go after either an agent or a seller and say, well, you knew about this, but they don't have it. It's very hard to prove that. So every single time
they didn't know.
Every single time I've been copied on communication between buyers or sellers, just as the broker I am. It's never worked out in the buyer's favor.
Yeah, it's caveat emptor. It's very, very big and bold.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think we have a great week ahead. Don't forget, if you or someone you know is looking for scholarships for education right now, check out the Marietta Kiwanis scholarships. The link for that is going to be in the show notes. The Cobb Galleria is now the Cobb Convention Center. Super excited. We're going to have to go and check out that chandelier.
I don't know. It's always been the Cobb Galleria, so it's going to be very difficult for me to say the Convention Center.
Yeah.
I think of the Civic Center.
I do too. Every time.
Don't do that.
Nope.
There's the Civic Center that is off of Fairground. It is not the same as the one by Cumberland Mall, which is the Convention Center now.
Yep. So the Convention Center is at Cobb Parkway and 75. Right there, I think it's Circle 75 Parkway. And then 120 in Fairground is the Civic.
It's the same thing as the Marietta Conference Center and the Marietta Country Club.
Yeah.
They're 2 different places, very, very far apart. One's on Stylesboro, and the other one is off of Powder Springs.
Very similar names.
Yes, very similar.
All right.
4 different places.
So we'll see you next week. We're going to be in February, so next week we'll be back here, and we'll update you with what happened in January in the Cobb and Cherokee and Metro Atlanta area.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you next week, y'all. Have a great one.
Bye.